The stage feels larger than memory, wider than the fear he thought he had buried years ago. Eli Ramos stands just beyond the curtain, listening to the low thunder of the audience settling into their seats, the murmur of hundreds of lives brushing past one another for a single night of entertainment. The smell of warm lights and polished wood drifts through the air, unfamiliar yet strangely intimate, like a place he once dreamed about and then tried to forget. A production assistant gives him a gentle nod. "You're next." Eli exhales slowly. His chest tightens, not from nerves alone, but from the weight of everything that brought him here. His fingers curl around the small object in his pocket, edges softened by years of handling. A photograph. He doesn't need to look at it to see it clearly. He knows every line of his father's face by heart. He remembers the house he grew up in, walls made of thin plywood his father measured and cut himself. When the rain came, it sounded like coins thrown angrily at the roof. When the sun came, it turned the single room into an oven. His father would come home each evening with sawdust clinging to his hair and sweat darkening his shirt, hands rough and cracked from work that never quite paid enough. Still, those hands would carefully fix a broken chair, mend a loose door, or carve a small wooden toy just to make Eli smile. Music was never practical. His mother used to say it gently, never cruelly. "Sing if it makes you happy," she would tell him while cooking rice over a gas stove, "but don't forget, happiness doesn't always pay the bills." His father never said much about it. He would simply listen when Eli sang, sometimes closing his eyes, sometimes nodding along as if each note were another plank holding the house together. Years ago, Eli had stood on this same stage, or one painfully similar, young, hopeful, voice trembling with inexperience and belief. He remembered the judges' polite smiles, the short feedback, the way hope drained from his body as he walked off stage pretending he was fine. He had flown back home with a cheap suitcase and a heavier heart, telling himself it was enough that he tried. Life did not stop for disappointment. His father's health worsened. Jobs became harder to find. Eli sang at weddings, at funerals, at small street gatherings where people tossed coins instead of applause. When his father passed away, Eli helped carry the coffin built by a carpenter friend who refused payment. The sound of the hammer sealing the wood shut echoed in Eli's chest for months afterward. He almost didn't come back. The letter inviting him to audition again sat unopened for days. It felt like a cruel joke, like the world testing how much hope he had left to lose. But one night, sitting alone with his guitar, Eli wrote a song. Not to impress anyone, not to win anything, just to speak to the man who had never once told him to stop dreaming. Now, the curtain parts. The lights hit him full on, brighter than he remembered. For a split second, he can't see the judges clearly, only silhouettes framed by glowing screens. The audience blurs into a single, breathing mass. His legs carry him forward anyway, muscle memory overriding fear. He introduces himself. His voice sounds smaller in the vast space, but steady. He tells them where he's from, about his father, about working with his hands even when his heart wanted to sing. He doesn't dress the story up. Poverty doesn't need poetry, it already has its own sharp language. As he speaks, he notices the judges' expressions change. Not dramatically, just subtly, leaning in, eyes narrowing with focus rather than judgment. One of them asks why he came back. Eli swallows. "Because I didn't finish my song last time," he says. "And because my father never got to hear it." Silence settles over the room, thick and fragile. He feels it pressing against his ribs. His hand slips back into his pocket, brushing the photo once more. He imagines his father standing at the back of the theater, arms crossed, work boots dusty, pretending not to be nervous. He steps toward the microphone. No band, no backing track, just him and the truth he carried across an ocean. "I wrote this for my father," he says quietly. The lights dim slightly. Somewhere in the audience, someone clears their throat. Eli closes his eyes, just for a heartbeat, and in that moment he is no longer on a famous stage. He is a boy again, sitting on the floor of a small house, singing while his father works, believing, without proof, that dreams are worth building, even if they take a lifetime to stand. The first note leaves Eli's chest like a confession. It wavers, barely louder than a breath, and for a terrifying instant he thinks it might disappear before it reaches the back of the room. His fingers tighten around the guitar neck, and he leans closer to the microphone as if protecting the sound with his body. Then the note settles, finds its place, and something inside him steadies with it. He begins softly, telling a story without naming it. The melody moves slowly, the way mornings used to move in his childhood, unhurried, heavy with the promise of labor. His voice carries the image of dawn light slipping through cracks in plywood walls, of a father rising before the sun, boots scraping against the floor while the rest of the house slept. Each word lands carefully, like a nail driven straight instead of bent. The audience listens, not politely, not casually, but with the kind of stillness that feels earned. Eli senses it more than he hears it. The usual rustle of programs, the quiet coughs and shifting seats, all fade away. Even the judges seem frozen, their faces tilted upward, eyes fixed on a young man who is no longer performing but remembering out loud. As the song moves into its second verse, his voice grows warmer, stronger. The fear that once sat in his throat loosens, replaced by something heavier and truer. He sings of hands rough from splinters and cement, hands that never learned to rest. He sings of silence, of love shown through action instead of words, through a roof that didn't leak as much this year, through school fees paid late but paid in full. His fingers slide along the strings, the guitar answering him faithfully. The melody rises slightly, and with it comes the ache. His voice cracks on a line about coming home empty-handed, about seeing disappointment flash across a father's face only to be replaced by pride so quickly it almost feels imagined. Eli doesn't fight the crack. He lets it live, lets it color the note, lets the truth make itself heard. In the front rows, people begin to shift, not from discomfort but from recognition. A woman presses her hand to her mouth. A man nods slowly, eyes shining. On the judges' panel, one of them blinks hard, staring down at the desk as if reading something written there. Simon sits very still, elbows resting on the table, gaze locked on the singer. The familiar sharpness in his expression has softened into something quieter, more dangerous, attention. The chorus arrives like a held breath finally released. Eli's voice lifts, no longer cautious, no longer small. He sings of carrying dreams like extra weight in a toolbox, of wondering whether to put them down or keep walking. The melody swells, filling the theater, climbing higher with each repetition. His voice rings with a strength he didn't know he still possessed, a strength built from years of singing where no one listened and working when no one clapped. For a moment, he forgets where he is. The stage lights vanish. The audience disappears. There is only the song and the man it is meant for. Eli imagines his father sitting on a wooden stool, wiping sweat from his brow, listening with the same quiet focus he always gave. He imagines the small nod at the end of each verse, the unspoken approval that once meant everything. The bridge comes unexpectedly, even to Eli. The music drops back, almost fragile again, and his voice lowers to a near whisper. He sings of loss now, of an empty house, of tools left untouched in the corner. The words feel sharp as they leave him, cutting open memories he usually keeps closed. His chest tightens, and for a heartbeat he fears he won't make it through the line. He does. The note stretches, trembling but unbroken, and something in the room breaks instead. A judge wipes at her eyes openly now, no attempt to hide it. Another leans forward, hands clasped together, lips pressed tight. Simon's gaze flickers downward, his jaw clenched, and when he looks up again his eyes shine unmistakably under the lights. Eli reaches the final chorus, and this time it is not about struggle. It is about gratitude. His voice opens fully, rich and clear, filling every corner of the theater. He sings of building something that lasts, even if you never get to see it finished. He sings of standing on borrowed shoulders, of carrying a legacy not made of money but of effort and love. The last note hangs in the air, long and pure. Eli holds it, feeling it vibrate through his chest, through the microphone, through the silent crowd. When he finally lets it go, the sound fades gently, like a sunset rather than an ending. For a second, nothing happens. The silence is so deep it feels physical, pressing against his ears. Eli lowers his guitar slowly, his hands shaking now that the song has released him. He opens his eyes fully and looks out at the audience, unsure whether to smile or cry. Then the applause erupts. It crashes over him in waves, loud and sudden, rising to a roar that seems to lift him where he stands. People leap to their feet. Hands clap until they sting. Cheers echo off the walls. Eli's breath catches as the sound washes through him, unfamiliar and overwhelming. He bows his head instinctively, pressing his lips together to keep them from trembling. At the judge's table, Simon stands. The movement alone draws another surge of noise from the crowd. Simon remains standing, one hand resting on the desk as if steadying himself. When he speaks, his voice is quieter than expected, but it carries. "That wasn't just a song," he says, pausing as emotion edges into his words. "That was a life." Eli looks at him, eyes burning, heart pounding so hard he's sure everyone can see it. Simon clears his throat, shaking his head slightly, a small, disbelieving smile breaking through. "You reminded a lot of people why they work so hard," he adds. "And why they keep going." The other judges echo the praise, their words blurring together in Eli's ears. He hears, honest, powerful, unforgettable, but what he feels most is release. Years of doubt loosen their grip. Years of quiet singing find their answer. Backstage later, when the noise has faded and the lights feel less blinding, Eli presses his palms together and whispers a thank you to no one and everyone at once. Somewhere beyond the walls of the theater, in memory and in spirit, a carpenter listens, and smiles.